At 2:47 in the morning, a call came in from a number my system had never seen before. The caller was whispering, she was frightened, she gave me her address. It was my address, my apartment, my building on 4th Avenue. I sent 2 officers, they found nothing, no signs of entry, no one there. I went home at 6 in the morning. I walked into my kitchen. My chair had been moved, 3 inches to the left of where I always leave it. I pulled the call recording that night. I put my earbuds in. I pressed play. I listened to the voice describe the break-in, the fear in it, the controlled quality of someone trying not to be heard by whoever was in the next room. I listened 4 times before I understood what I was hearing. The voice on the recording was mine. Before I continue, if you are watching this, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know. Like this video if the story has you already, and subscribe with notifications on because I am uploading 1 episode every day this week. You do not want to miss what comes next. My name is Marlowe Quinn. I work the overnight shift at the Seattle Emergency Communications Center on 2nd Avenue. I have been doing this for 6 years. My job is to receive emergency calls, assess them, and dispatch the correct response. I am fast and I am accurate and I am, by every measure my supervisors have used to evaluate me, very good at this work. I am good at it because of one specific skill. I can tell the difference between a real emergency and noise. Most people who call 911 are in genuine distress, but some calls are confusion, some are accidents, some are people who are performing a distress they are not actually experiencing. I can hear it. I cannot explain how. I have just always been able to hear it. That skill is what makes what happened on Tuesday night impossible to explain away, because I know the difference. I know what real sounds like. I have 40,000 calls of practice. And the voice on that recording was real. It was mine, and I have never called my own apartment from a number that does not exist while sitting at my desk 35 minutes away. I want to take you back to the beginning of that shift, because to understand what the recording meant, you need to understand the night that led up to it. The Emergency Communications Center never goes completely quiet. Even at 3 in the morning, even on the slowest nights, there is always something. A medical call from Capitol Hill, a disturbance report from Belltown, the low, persistent hum of a city that does not fully sleep. I like the night shift for exactly this reason. It is busy enough to keep you sharp, but not so overwhelming that you lose precision. The day shift runs at a different frequency, louder, faster, more bodies at the desks, supervisors pacing between stations. At night, it is smaller. You can hear yourself think. My station is 3rd from the left in the 2nd row. I have been at this specific station for 4 years. I know every flicker of the monitors, every quirk of the call routing software, every sound the system makes when something is working correctly and when something is not. I am, in the language of the job description, highly situationally aware, which means I notice things. I have taken more than 40,000 calls in 6 years. I know this because the center tracks it and puts it in your annual performance review as if it is a number you should feel something about. 40,000 calls, medical emergencies, fires, accidents, domestic situations, people who are frightened or confused or in pain and need someone to stay calm on the other end of the line while their world comes apart. The thing nobody tells you about this job before you start is that the hardest calls are not the violent ones. The hardest calls are the quiet ones. The person who cannot tell you what is wrong because they are too frightened to speak above a whisper. The person who describes their emergency in the specific careful way of someone who is being listened to by someone they do not want to hear them. You learn to read the silences as carefully as the words. You learn to hear what is underneath what is being said. You learn that the space between what a caller tells you and what is actually happening is where the most important information lies. I had 6 years of practice at reading silences, which is why, when the call came in at 2:47, I knew within 4 seconds that something was wrong in a way I did not have a category for. It was a routine Tuesday night up until the moment it wasn't. My first call came in at 10:58 p.m., a vehicle accident on I-5 northbound. 2 cars, no injuries. Dispatched, logged, 40 seconds. The second call was a medical welfare check. An elderly woman in Ballard, whose daughter was calling from out of state because her mother had not answered her phone in 6 hours. I dispatched a unit and stayed with the daughter on the line for 12 minutes while we waited for confirmation. Third call just after midnight. A noise complaint from a building on Pine Street that turned into a domestic situation requiring 2 units. I handled that call for 11 minutes. The responding officer called back 3 minutes after clearing the scene because the situation had developed. I handled the follow-up for another 9 minutes. All of it was routine. All of it was exactly what a Tuesday night in November looks like from my desk. I drank my second coffee. I processed 3 more calls between 1 and 2 a.m. I talked briefly to the dispatcher at the station to my right about a call he had handled that was unusual in a funny, rather than frightening way. I ate half the sandwich I had brought from home and put the other half in my bag for the drive home. At 2:40, I pulled up the call log to review the last 4 hours. Everything was documented, everything was resolved or in active progress. A clean shift by any measure. At 2:47, a new call came in. I saw it appear on my screen before I heard it route to my headset. The call ID came up. The caller's number field showed a sequence of digits I had never seen produce an error before and have not seen since. The field read, "Origin unverifiable." I had been dispatching for 6 years. I had never seen that message. I answered on the second ring. Protocol is to answer within 3 rings, identify the center, and ask the caller to state their emergency. I did all 3. The line connected. There was a half-second of ambient sound, the specific quality of an interior space that was very quiet. Then a voice. It was barely above a whisper. Female. Controlled in the way that people who are genuinely terrified sometimes control themselves because they understand that being heard matters more than falling apart. I recognized that quality of control immediately. It was not performance. It was a person managing the most frightened version of themselves in real time. She said, "Someone is in my apartment. I can hear them moving. I am in the bathroom. Please send someone." I said, "I hear you. You're safe. Stay on the line. Can you tell me your address?" She gave it. And I stopped. I stopped because I had heard that address before. I had heard it the way you hear an address you know without having to look it up. The specific arrangement of numbers and street name and apartment, number that I have typed on delivery forms and written at the DMV and given to every person who has ever needed to find me. It was my address. It was my apartment. It was my building on 4th Avenue. I have been trained for situations that require me to separate my professional function from my personal reaction. I have taken calls involving people I know. I have taken calls involving situations that were genuinely horrifying. I have a process for this. I identify the conflict, flag it to my supervisor, and continue doing my job. I did not flag it. In the moment, the part of my brain that processes professional protocol had already been bypassed by the part that does something simpler and faster. It heard a frightened woman give my address and it said, "Someone is in your home." I ran the address through the system to confirm what I already knew. It came back. My building, my floor, my apartment number. I said, "Are you still in the bathroom? Do not leave. Do not make any noise. I am sending help right now." She said, "Please hurry. I dispatched 2 units. Code 2. The first unit arrived at my building in 4 minutes and 18 seconds. 4 minutes and 18 seconds, during which the woman on my line stayed completely silent. I could hear her breathing. Controlled, measured breaths. Someone who was frightened but holding it together. I told her the officers were in the building. I told her to stay where she was until she heard a knock and heard an officer identify themselves by voice. I stayed on the line. The officer's radio check came in 2 minutes later. Building secure. No signs of entry or disturbance. Apartment door locked from inside. No response to knock. I said, There should be a female occupant in the bathroom. She was on the line with me until 30 seconds ago. The officer said, "There's nobody here, Marlowe. Apartment is empty." I looked at my screen. The call log showed the call still active. The number field still read origin unverifiable. I said, "Hello? Are you still there?" The line was silent. Not dead, the connection indicator still showed active, just silent. Then the call disconnected. I told Cal Briggs about the call before I left. I told him calmly and with professional detachment. A routing error, probably. Maybe a prank from someone who had found my address somehow. He said, "Take Wednesday off if you need it." I said I was fine. I drove home through the gray Seattle morning. I parked in the building's underground garage. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. I walked down the hallway to my apartment. I put my key in the lock. The door opened normally. The apartment was exactly as I had left it. Living room undisturbed. Kitchen clean. Bedroom door closed as I always leave it. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I noticed it. The chair on the left side of my kitchen table, the one I always push in flush with the table edge when I leave for work, a habit so ingrained I do not consciously think about it, was not flush. It was approximately 3 inches further from the table than I leave it. I stood in my kitchen and looked at that chair for a long time. 3 inches is not a distance you notice unless you are the person who always returns things to the same position. 3 inches is not the distance of a break-in, of something dramatic or violent. 3 inches is the distance of someone who was there and was careful. Someone who moved one thing and put everything else back exactly as it was. Someone who wanted me to notice. Only me. Nobody else would have seen it. I could not sleep. I tried for an hour and then I stopped trying. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and logged into the remote access portal for the call management system. I told myself this was a legitimate work purpose. I pulled the call from 247. I put my earbuds in. I pressed play. The call quality was exactly what I expected, clear, the specific clarity of the dispatch system's recording infrastructure, which is higher quality than most consumer recording. I heard myself answer. I heard myself state the center and ask the caller to state their emergency. I heard the ambient sound of the interior space. Then, the whispered voice. I sat very still and I listened. And again, 4 times in total. On the 5th listen, I was not listening to the words anymore. I was listening to the voice itself, the specific frequency of it, the particular pattern of the vowel sounds, the way the breath moved between the words. I have been answering phones for 6 years. I have heard my own recorded voice more times than most people do in a lifetime. The way it sounds slightly different from inside your own head. The way your consonants are harder than you expect and your vowels are slightly flatter. I knew my voice. The whispering woman in the bathroom of my apartment, calling 911 from a number that does not exist, describing a break-in in my home while I sat at my desk 35 minutes away. That was my voice. I sat at my kitchen table at 4 in the morning with the laptop open and the waveform on the screen, and I listened to myself call myself for help. And I thought about the chair, 3 inches.